Is that the agenda here, Dale? To make people more miserable? What's going on?
Yes. Yeah, and you remind me, I was on a show, right-wing radio show a few weeks ago. Julia Hartley-Brewer said our intention was to uninvent the wheel. You'll probably remember that one. Of course, none of this is true. And actually, to your question, which is more important, I would say they are both equally important. And what's missing from this entire debate is the fact that we can boost the economy, we can lower bills, we can make ourselves better off by pursuing net zero policies. That's entirely missing from the debate. It was entirely missing from the poll.
But the OBS says it's going to cost us £350 billion by 2050, or 10 billion quid a year. Like a monthly salary for you, Dale, right?
Perhaps. Obviously not. I heard the reporter from The Sun say 10 billion a year. And do you know what? That's how much we already give to the fossil fuel industry in tax breaks and subsidies. We find that sum of money to burn fossil fuels, to pollute ourselves and drive the climate crisis. And yet when we're told it may cost that much to avoid all of those bad things, we throw our hands up and say, where can we find that sum of money? The answer is we're already giving it to the old way of doing things. We just have to flip those subsidies around.
There it is, Ben. Simple as that. The answer is for everybody to see. Just flip it around and actually it won't be costing this amount of money and everybody's happy.
Well, maybe flipping it around is easier in unicorn land and when you've got as much money to throw around flipping things as Dale has. But he says that he doesn't want to reinvent the wheel or uninvent the wheel. But a lot of people are going to have their wheels taken away from them, in fact. A lot of people are going to find that they're not going to be able to drive in this future in which everything is turned upside down for them. And so I think Dale needs to think a little bit more carefully, maybe not so much about the technology, just about the technologies and what they can really offer, but whether or not people want this future in which he gets to decide what's flipped around and what's not flipped around. And the poll this morning, I think, spoke very clearly to that fact, to the fact that people don't want it. Just 12% of people, according to the polls, listed net zero as the top 3 priorities that they think the government should focus on.
Dale, your contention, if we don't hit net zero by 2050, just give us the scenario that you think is likely to manifest here.
Well, look, the energy crisis of the last couple of years has cost us something like £100 billion so far. Energy bills are still twice what they used to be pre-crisis. And at that point in time, we spent $50 billion a year bringing fossil fuels here just to burn them. Where we have enough renewable energy to power our country completely, we can bring bills down to the lowest place they've ever been, eradicate fuel poverty, create jobs and incredible economic strengthening if we just make the switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy. I want to take issue with a lot of what Ben said, but honestly, I can't be bothered because it was just personal attacks. But the Sun poll itself missed out the biggest statistic. If you go on Twitter, you'll see that. They missed out the fact that 3 times as many people support net zero as don't. 65% of the British public support getting to net zero. Everything else is twisted. They even produced 2 infographics answering questions that weren't even in the poll.
But they support
a closer look.
Yeah, no, indeed, and we did establish that with our last guest. But of course, what they don't support is at any cost.
Of course, and this is why. From my perspective, this has all been put to them from a false premise that it's going to cost to get to net zero. That isn't true. By the way, I don't back the boiler ban in favor of heat pumps. I think heat pumps are a big mistake. Banning the sale of new petrol and diesel cars by 2030. Remember, it's new cars, not all cars. Nobody's having the wheels taken away. That's a rather stupid thing to say, actually. It just makes perfect sense. By 2030, you won't be able to buy one anyway because the manufacturers won't make them.
But what's going to happen, Dale? What's going to happen to the world if we don't do all of this stuff? Are we all going to die? What's the case here?
Not so long ago, it was reckoned by the UN, the IPCC, that we would hit 3-degree global temperature rise sometime between now and 2050. A couple of weeks ago, they reckon it's going to happen in the next 5 years. We're in danger of runaway climate change. Last summer, 40,000 people across Europe died from excess temperatures. This is happening all over the world. Pakistan flooded recently, Italy flooded recently. We've got extreme heat, we have extreme cold, we have extreme dry, we have extreme wet. And all of these are the classic signs of a climate that's getting out of control. It's unimaginable how hard it will be to live and the disruption to our economy and our daily lives if we let this happen. And super, super expensive.
There it is, Ben. It's costly, it's counterproductive, and it's killing people.
Well, I'm not sure any of that was true. We've been hearing for the last 50 or 60 years that environmental catastrophes are just around the corner. Most famously, the Club of Rome's report in 1972 claimed that there wouldn't be a country such as England by now. There is no evidence of a climate crisis, of climate change influencing, for example, agricultural productivity or the extent of disease and the number of people suffering from disease. So all of these claims that doom are just around the corner, we've been heard before, and they're piled on to try and force people and coerce people into supporting the net zero agenda. All it takes, Dale, if you believe what you say, is for you to put these claims and these ideas to the public and say, what do you think? Rather than try to badger people with these implausible scare stories, and I'm surprised
I'm not badgering anybody.
You're taking.
I'm not badgering anybody. These are not scare stories, and these facts don't come from me. They come from the United Nations and the IPCC, which is a panel of 1,000 of the top scientists in the world. Public opinion does not counter science. No, I'm not. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. You're all about personal slurs, right? Get yourself some facts, drop the personal slurs, let's have a proper debate.
It's not a personal slur to observe.
Yes, they are. That's all you've got, man. That's all you've got. That's all you keep saying to me.
No, it's not, because you keep talking over me.
All right, so I'm sure Ben loves you to bits, Dale. Let's just establish that. Whatever sides you guys take on this, is there any commonality here, Ben? Is there any part of you that thinks something about what Dale has been saying is actually right?
Well, not if it's founded on these scare stories. No, I can see that some people in the world, and for good reason, might want to live, an eco lifestyle, if you like, and that should be their choice. But what I have a problem with is the denial of democratic choice and debate in UK politics. All of the mainstream political parties are of one mind on this, and they haven't let the public make any decisions about whether or not they want this net zero agenda. And now that's coming to a crunch point, and now the public are registering their dissatisfaction with it, as we've seen in the polls in this poll today. And I think that the longer this goes on with just a doom narrative going on, and the denial of democracy, the more explosive the final test of this policy agenda is going to be. So by all means, live your eco lifestyle and believe what you want to, but stop inflicting it on people through this kind of moral blackmail, this eco-doom moral blackmail. It's not good for anyone. Eco-doom
moral blackmail, Dale. And we had that message from Lucy, I don't know if you heard it before you came on, who said, if you remove all the oil from the world right now, nothing will change in terms of global temperatures.
Yeah, let me just say this, right? I answered your question, what will 2050 look like? That's not my preferred line of conversation. I prefer to talk to you about the opportunities of the green economy, right? They are massive. To switch away from oil into renewable energy will strengthen our economy, create forever jobs, because fossil fuels are finite, they're single use, all kinds of amazing benefits that are waiting for us. I don't want to talk about 2050 and the doom and gloom. I agree, just with that one thing, there's too much doom and gloom in the world. Everything else being said is nonsense. Where's the deficit in democracy in our country? I thought Johnson brought in net zero. May before him, Johnson augmented it. He had an 80-seat majority, right? Where's the lack of democracy in that? Except our democratic system is a little bit flawed, right? I get that. But look, we have an elected government. I'd be happy if we had an election right now, and let's put net zero in there. The fact is, net zero will save us money, and it will make us a stronger, more resilient country. These are facts that aren't shared with people. They weren't shared in the poll. Of course, if you say to somebody, do you mind paying more for net zero? They're going to say, actually, I'd rather not. But that's a false premise. We don't have to pay more to get to net zero.
So are you confident that if Keir Starmer, I know you support Keir Starmer, if he came in as Prime Minister, then nothing is going to get more expensive in terms of this argument, Dale?
Honestly, I have no idea. That's a very broad question, Ian. I know that energy is cheaper if we make it from the wind and the sun, and we decouple from global fossil fuel markets, and we stop polluting ourselves in the process. I mean, that's a fact. We're putting out a report tomorrow that shows the potential of British rooftops to contribute to our national energy needs. 13% of all the electricity we need in our country for homes and for business can be made on our rooftops. We can make £16 billion worth of electricity that way and create an incredible number of jobs. And every pound we invest in renewable energy brings 2.5 times as many jobs as in fossil fuels, and nearly 3 times the GDP growth. The real opportunity for us is to put our money into renewable energy, not fossil fuels.
There it is, Ben. I mean, it makes just fiscal sense. It's cheaper. It's kinder. What's not to like?
Well, it's just not true. And if you look at the the problem is that renewable energy producers just haven't been producing energy at a cost lower than the historical price of gas. And the reason that the gas price went up is because countries, including the UK, you just talk over people. And that's
no, I'm not. I'm sorry, I can't help it. You're talking rubbish, man.
You're not hearing me out, though, are you, Dale? Which is the tactic that you and the Green Movement has. That's all you can do is shout at people. That's what Extinction Rebellion is all about, and Just Stop Oil is all about, isn't it?
No,
obstructing people. Of course it is. Of course it is.
No.
Well, where are the cheaper prices? Where are the cheaper prices? They don't exist. You can see it for yourself. All of the
Can I answer that question?
Prices,
you just asked the question.
No, I'm telling you now. No. All of the strike prices. You're talking over me. All of the strike prices that were offered by renewable energy operators in the last decade have not been taken up by those producers, by those developers, because they can't produce energy cheaper than the historical price of gas.
But you misunderstand that situation. Can I just explain to you? If somebody bids for or wins a contract and doesn't take up the strike price, that's because the market price is higher. They can produce for that price, that strike price, but they prefer to take the market price. You misunderstand entirely why this happens.
Well, they haven't produced the energy for the electricity for that price. The power is still at a much higher price than the historical price of power from gas. Well, it is, isn't it? Because that's what people are paying.
So why is that, Dale? We often hear, you get a stat every now and again that say on this day or that week that the grid was powered mostly by solar or wind farms, whatever it happens to be, and yet I've never spoken to anybody who said, do you know what, my bill went right down because everything I was getting was produced for nothing.
Well, look, if you look right now at rooftop solar, which I mentioned a minute ago, you're looking at a payback period of something between 4 and 5 years. There is barely an investment opportunity in life or in business that gives you that kind of rate of return, 25%, something like that. It's quite incredible. We're building solar projects, so are other people, grid-scale solar, without any strike price, without any government support of any kind. We're building them right now because it's the cheapest way to make electricity in our country, bar none. So what's being said here is nonsense, right? Renewable energy, wind and sun, onshore, are the cheapest forms of energy.
But where are the cheaper bills? I think that part of Ben's contention there is, and lots of our listeners and viewers, Dale, as you would appreciate, are saying, where are the cheaper bills? We've yet to see. We talk about all of this. It's doing. You're building more. The infrastructure is increasing. Where are the cheaper bills?
So if you want to go back to the energy crisis and ask why energy bills went so high and remain so high, actually, there are 2 core reasons. One is we allow global markets to set the price of fossil fuels that we make here and sell to ourselves. So half of our gas comes from the North Sea. We paid 10 times more for it at the peaks of the energy crisis than normal because the global market set the price. And then gas-fired electricity in our country is just 40% of our energy mix. But we allowed the price of that gas-fired electricity, which was super high because of the price of gas, to set the price of all electricity on the grid. Renewable, nuclear, everything, you name it. That's a fundamental market flaw baked into our energy market, which the Tories put there, and they should change.
Are we going to die, Dale?
Listen, 4 million people are already dead. The United Nations say that. In the last 3 decades, 44 million people are already dead around the world. I mean, it's a fact. The climate crisis is killing people. 40,000 people last year in Europe alone. Come on.
Ben?
Well, if you want to see dead people, roll on the net zero agenda. That's what's going to kill people. We know that what makes people wealthy and healthy is cheap and abundant energy. And unfortunately, what we've been doing for the last 20 years and what Dale seems to be supporting is restrictions on the production of energy that's reliable and affordable, such as natural gas. So in Britain, there have been moratoriums on fracking and reductions in until recently in the production of gas here and across Europe. Dale talks about a global price. In fact, there's a regional price. It's a European price. People in the States have been paying historically, recently, very far less. There's no global price of gas. So the prices of gas in the US is far lower and has been far lower. And all of Europe, many European countries have moratoriums on gas production, both fracking and conventional extraction. The Netherlands just this week has announced a reduction in the production, the closure of a gas field. And what happened then? And Dale should know this as a good capitalist. As you increase scarcity, the price goes up. So there was a tick as soon as the Netherlands made their announcement. The price of gas went up. I'm sorry, but this is just more nonsense. If you say there's no global price of a gas, then you live in a dream world, because there is absolutely a global price of a gas. The US example is a different one. They have different, but they have different regulations. They wouldn't allow the export of their frack gas, and that kept it at a local price. But there absolutely is a global price of gas, and that's why energy bills hit £4,000 a year in this energy crisis, and that's not cheap, healthy, and wealthy fossil fuels. That's incredibly expensive, and we had to intervene as a government and spend nearly £100 billion. That's not,
okay. Gents, we have to stop there for time and no other reason. Thank you to Dale Vince, founder of Ecotricity, the writer and journalist, Ben Pyle, co-founder of Climate Debate UK.